Welcome. So today we are going to be reading excerpts from the book Windhorse Women by Lynn Andrews. Lynn Andrews, I actually met her, and I forgot what year. I think it was 1991 or 1992. She was a shaman who had gone to Canada to meet. Well, she wasn't a shaman when she began. She lived in Beverly Hills, and I'm trying to remember her actual history. Trying to remember. I think she was like an interior decorator or something like that. And she came across a wedding basket. And one of her famous books is called Jaguar Woman. It was a New York Times bestseller. I'm going to give you a preface of what this is about, and then we'll read some excerpts. Outside of Kathmandu, where the majestic Himalayas thrust their jagged peaks into Nepal's azure sky, Lynn Andrews begins a new journey. This odyssey of the spirit will take her to an ending and a beginning, the completing of the circle of learning, first described in her wonderful autobiography of her life as an apprentice shaman medicine woman, and the start of another quest for the truth only reached through struggle on the human path. Over 15 years ago, Lynn Andrews became an apprentice to Agnes Whistling Elk, a Native American shaman woman from Manitoba, Canada. Since then, her special mission has been to share with us the mysteries and the revelations, the discoveries and warning she learned. So I'm going to read the excerpt. I'm actually going to read chapter 1. She was a great influence on me. I met her, like I said, in 1991 at Alexandria 2 bookstore. She was promoting her book Shikai Woman about her future incarnation in Japan. Alexandria 2 bookstore. She was promoting her book Shikai Woman about her future incarnation in Japan. And she had, and what I mean by opalescent eyes is clear. If you've ever seen opals in action, like blue opals, her eyes did that action. Turned out she could see auras, and her and I locked eyes. I was about 31, 32, and we locked eyes, and I could see that she saw things that at the time made me question many things about myself. So she was a very powerful, she was the real deal, no bullshit shaman. Okay, introduction. And again, the book is called Windhorse Woman, A Marriage of Spirit. I became an apprentice of Agnes Whistling Elk 15 years ago, when I was subsequently initiated into the Sisterhood of the Shields. It became clear to me, as the only non-native woman, that I had a special destiny with them. Agnes asked me to write about our life and teachings together. She said that we live in a time of vision, a time when the people of Mother Earth are eager for a new and more balanced way of life. In quotes, first we must heal the body of Mother Earth with a renewed understanding of feminine consciousness. We must move out into the world to experience what is missing. What is missing is an understanding and incorporation of the primal woman, Agnes said to me with tears in her eyes. From that day on, I have been working with different members of the sisterhood on my process of evolvement. I have been sharing my experience as that process relates to 20th century life and survival. Every 50 years, the Sisterhood of the Shields meets in the Valley of Lukton in Tibet. For years, I was told of this extraordinary gathering. Windhorse Woman is about our journey into Nepal and Tibet. I've changed the names and places of all those involved that are in my books to protect their privacy. I'm not writing as an anthropologist, but as a woman in search of truth. This book does not illustrate traditional shamanic traditions from Nepal or Tibet. The ceremonies that we perform in all my books are non-native women, and they relate to my specific needs as an apprentice on the path of heart. The manner and appearance of a prophet, our secret origins, these are born of a woman who will still live inside of us, and though she's hiding from what we've become. Rumi. Chapter 1. Spirit Wind. It has been written in sacred symbols by the gods all that which come to pass. An old Nepalese hill woman with creased mahogany skin and thick gray hair was sitting on her heels in a squatting position. She was stringing large coral beads. She wore a printed red sari and bright yellow blouse. The woman she was speaking to was not much younger, but seemed to be attending to the older woman's needs much as an apprentice would do. "I have some buttered tea, Ani," the younger woman said, placing an earthenware cup on the adobe ledge near her. Ani was deep in thought, her eyes squinting so that barely a glint of light reflected off her dark eyes. Then taking the cup, Ani looked into it and wrinkled her nose, sniffing the smear of yak butter that was settling on the surface of the tan liquid. Her thoughts had gone beneath the water and tea. All her life, the configuration of simple tea leaves in a cup of tea had stimulated Ani's great gift of prophecy. After a long time, she whispered, "Oh, my dear Didi, I have waited all my years for what is to soon come." Ani spoke in Nepalese. "Ani, what are you speaking of?" "I've taught you long and well, Didi. Look into the tea water for yourself and you will tell me." Ani, her huge carved silver earrings shining like shields in the sun, handed the teacup back to Didi, their brown fingers hard like weathered goat hide, and met for a moment. Didi looked at Ani with surprise and then slowly lifted the cup with both hands up to gazing level. She took a deep breath, her chest under her heavy bone necklace rising and falling quietly for several moments. "Oh," she explained, "as it is written in the caves, what you saw as a young girl in the mountains of Nepal will come to pass." Now, Ani got to her feet, unable to contain her excitement. "Look, Didi, there, that rainbow. It means there's a bridge from one kingdom to another. We have waited lifetimes for the last piece of the mandala to arrive. A young woman will search for us. She will bring us gifts. She does not know the sacred transport of her journey. I must teach her through a long ascent into the mountains of the Chepang." "You mean she does not know why she is coming to meet with us?" "No. Truth must be passed through experience. She will bring us a gift that will in some way complete this sacred round. It will be the key to finding the sacred center that has been lost for us for thousands of years. There's a valley high in the Himalayas where the great books are hidden in stone vaults. Many of the teachings have been revealed to us in the sacred hills and in the sky. The ancient ones have shown us many things, but never have they led us to the valley where the lost teachings have been hidden for centuries." Ani's eyes closed. She was remembering a beautiful vision she had seen as a young girl with her teacher in the mountains. She had run her fingers over the sacred writing on cold cave walls, and suddenly a whole world had opened up before her. She had seen a vision of a valley that had opened up a world before her. Snow-capped mountains, meadows of flowers, and crystal clear lakes surrounding a beautiful stone monastery with a golden spire. It was a beautiful building, so beautiful, it was unlike any other she had ever seen. And for a moment, she had a glimpse of a small library within the monastery, and then the vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Oh, grandmother, what does it mean?" she had asked her teacher. "It means that perhaps you will be shown the way to the secret valley. One day, it could happen for you, my daughter." More than 90 years had passed since that day in the caves, and yet the memory in Ani's head was as clear as if it had happened the day before. Ani turned and looked at Didi. "All Asia has spoken of hidden kingdoms like Shambhala or Shangri-La. Many have thought her green pastures and citadels of wisdoms were desiccated and lost forever. Many see her only as a legend of a possible great city that is now in ruin under the shifting sands of an Asian desert. But they have lost faith. There is a special valley, and the sacred knowledge of our ancestors come from her." Ani turned away and looked toward the snow-covered Himalayas. The darkness of evening was rising up into the valley. The purple shadows of elongated the deep crevices in the foothills. A hawk circled above, turning gold and then silver as he disappeared into the mist, settling over the small stone house. Bells sounded from down the mountain, their tones lasting for a minute. "A spirit in the wind is in the mountains, Didi. The mountains dance for us. They have the spirit we are looking for, and they teach us with their circles of stone Hear them ringing with sound, Didi, like the bells on Vishnu Street or the water spouts at Muktina. The two grandmothers smiled at each other with great joy as the mist enshrouded the adobe portal and the entire house was lost in a white cloud. Now I'm going to tell you something. These portals that they're talking about, where these hidden libraries are up in the Himalayas, I first read of that in The Third Eye by Rampati Lobsang. And he wrote about climbing into the Himalayas, all these monks climbing, and it was snow and it was cold, and suddenly it was like a portal appeared, and they were in this incredible oasis, you could call it, warm and like a jungle, and fruit trees and scents of flowers. And I'll never forget that. So this is apparently a truth. Portals will be opening. There's a poem I'm going to read to you that she has in the book. Dreaming the roads. Snow leopards cast about on their own power, seeking the highest air. It is our right to live wild as jackrabbits, quick as blue-belly lizards, racing near the back porch. I dream of snowy roads, a great winter coat obscuring the road's torso. And through our shoes, with eyes found at the bottom of our feet, we see our way. John Joseph Crimmins. Chapter 2. The wind is like a horse. An icy wind blew across the glacier pass. My cheeks were covered with tiny particles of snow that had swirled up from the ice in the blustering wind currents. A Dorji Lapska stood golden and austere against the blue-purple sky. A Sherpa leading a yak, Agnes whistling elk, Ruby Plenty Cheeps and I trekked around a glacier that had been inching its way 10 million years down a slice between sheer gray striated cliffs. Walking over the crest of the path, we collectively caught our breaths as we looked down into a green valley surrounded by snow-covered Himalayan peaks. Farther down on either side of the trail were tall rhododendron bushes blooming with bursts of garnet red color. The change in vegetation from stark barren windswept glacier country to green-flowered meadows and village was surreal, as if one reality defined the other in a polarity of color and feelings. We had been walking at a steady pace for over 4 hours. The trail had been climbing always gently upwards. My legs were tired and very sore from the 3 preceding days. We had been trekking from a small village 3 days outside of Kathmandu. My head and heart were so full of new smells, sounds, and the magnificent kaleidoscope of mountain and valley grandeur that neither Agnes Ruby nor I had been sleeping very well. Every bell sounding or snort from the yak found us wide awake. And looking around, now at the crest of the trail, we sat down to rest. Our Sherpa, named Concha, had been very remote and gruff at first, but now was full of smiles. He seemed to have attached himself to Ruby. He was fascinated by her strange blue eyes and the fact that even though blind, she could see her way on the mountain paths as well as he. She poked and kidded him, and they laughed together like children. His 30-year-old face as dark as hers, but with fewer wrinkles. Concha seemed a little in awe of these 2 old Indian women who looked so oddly young and yet ancient at the same time. I would watch him staring at them, and then at me, as if he were waiting for me to turn into an old crone before his very eyes. Many times I muttered to him that it might not be long, so he should keep on looking, as I struggled up a particularly steep part on the trail with a shale shifting under my boots, sending me skidding down on my side for 10 or 15 yards. I took a sip of water from my canteen and curled up in a sheepskin that Concha had offered me. My thought was just to close my eyes and rest for a minute. I still had not totally adjusted to the altitude. Due to my physical exhaustion and the thinner air, I was in deep sleep in moments, as I felt the wind come up from the valley and fill me with a scent of flowers and newly cut grass. As I slept, I dreamed of northern Canada and the cabin where I first met Agnes. I had gone to visit her there a few months ago, and our journey to Nepal had been revealed to us at that time in a crystal ceremony. My dreaming on this mountain pass was so vivid, it was as if I were physically going back in time. I had sat down with Agnes in her cabin when I first arrived. I remembered I had looked into her face, tears of joy stinging my eyes. She looked so old that the skin on her cheeks had sunk even farther under her rounded cheekbones. She reminded me of a beautiful oak leaf turned brown and fragile with age. I felt that if I touched her at that moment, she might crumble and turn to dust. "Agnes, I've missed you so much," I said. I was sniveling in my Kleenex. "Have you got allergies, my daughter?" "Oh, no, well, maybe. I'm just so glad to see you." Agnes stoked the fire in the potbelly stove and sat down with a blue and red trade blanket over her legs. She wore her customary Pendleton shirt and a denim skirt. A red and white beaded shield hung from around her neck. She watched me with some amazement. The wind whistled around the corner of the cabin, the logs in the walls creaking. Outside it was twilight, the time when the world changes. There was stillness about Agnes that was contagious. Soon I stopped fidgeting and put my Kleenex away. I sat down across from this Indian woman who had been my teacher for so many years. It could have been yesterday that I'd sat here inquiring about the sacred marriage basket. That was so long ago. "We have not been together in this cabin for many seasons, my daughter. You have much to tell me," Agnes said. Her eyes were catching the rays of sunlight that filtered through the window across us. Her eyes began to shine like dusty mirrors, and a faint smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Agnes, why are you smiling at me like that?" She was making me fidget again with her intense gaze. A row of white teeth appeared as Agnes slapped her knee and laughed out loud. "All these years, and an old broken-down Indian woman still makes you nervous?" Her shoulders bounced up and down as she giggled. Then her mood shifted instantly, as I had witnessed so often before. When a thought crossed Agnes' mind like a cloud traveling over the face of the moon, the light emanated from her eyes would darken, and her expression would become serious. When this happened, all I could do was to wait respectfully and listen. I never disturbed her thoughts. Now, she sighed quietly, closing her eyes as if listening to her heart. I closed my eyes too, but my lids wanted to snap open. I wanted to watch the face of my teacher from whom I had been separated for so many months. I loved her, and I needed to see her. "Close your eyes," Agnes said in a soft voice. I shut my eyes, wondering how she knew they were open. I tried to sit quietly. My nose itched, and I scratched my arm that had begun to tingle. I wiggled in my chair, and it squeaked and scrapped on the board floor of the cabin. Then, try as I might to hold it back, I sneezed. I looked at Agnes, and she was glaring at me like I was a mouse being caught and watched by a cat. "Sorry," I said. Agnes closed her eyes again, and I did the same. This time, I took a deep breath and began to relax. I listened to the wind moaning outside, and the sound of the high blowing in the fir trees settled me into myself. Finally, my excitement at seeing Agnes again calmed into a warm glow of quiet enthusiasm. After several minutes, Agnes spoke. "It has always been the wind for you." "What do you mean?" "The wind is like a horse for you. You ride her into other worlds," Agnes said, looking at me. "I guess you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way." "The wind is a relative of yours and an important ally. Let's find out what this ancestor wind has to tell you." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to look into my eyes and think of an old grandmother. A grandmother as old as the north wind. She is the wind. She is ancient, but she is buoyant and joyous, and she plays with the loose fragment of your mind, the ones that have not yet fit into the great puzzle. Let her blow those pieces of thought into a giant whirlwind. Look into my eyes, my daughter, and listen to the wind. She has something to say." As I looked into Agnes's eyes, it grew darker outside. The fire cracked in the stove, and the gas lamp flickered and dimmed. Agnes's face became more radiant, and her eyes appeared to glow with an immense energy that seemed somehow separate from her. It was as if another energy form had come to joined with hers. A life force was projecting through her eyes that was unfamiliar to me. I was fascinated, watching the subtle changes in light around the iris of her eyes. I gazed at her unblinking for a long time, just as a wave of powerful energy began to move inside of me. Agnes closed her eyes and shifted in her chair. "That's enough for now, little wolf," she said, rubbing her hands together. "Make us some tea and we'll sleep. It is late." "Agnes, what was that all about? You look so strange. Your eyes completely changed. I've never seen you do that before." I was rubbing my numbed arm and trying to get my senses back. I got up and made us a cup of tea. I joined Agnes again in front of the wood stove. "Did you hear the wind talking?" Agnes asked. "Just now." "No, you silly pup, when you were looking into my eyes." "I guess not, really. I was fascinated by your eyes." "Next time, pay attention to your grandmother Wind. She has much to tell you about a land far away." "What land far away? Never mind. I'm sleepy. We'll talk tomorrow." So this is from the book The Wind. It's called Windhorse Woman by Lynn Andrews. She was an amazing shaman. She lived in Joshua Tree. She died, I believe she died, I'm trying to remember if it was 2014 or if it was 2018 or thereabouts. Lynn Andrews. Let me see, any comments or questions on the book so far? And so moving forward for the next few months, I'll be reading excerpts of books that I love. I've been asked by many people for a long time about giving a list of books. And I have so many books. And I've read so many that I think it's easier for me to start just being divinely guided to read to you guys. It makes more sense to me. And I jump around. Yesterday, I read about crop circles by Freddie Silva. And I'm being shown to read chapter 9, The Serpent of the Sky. I think it's important because the serpent is the Kundalini rising. We have chakras across the planets and they're shifting and changing. What was true 20 years ago, where the chakras were placed on this planet, have changed because as we move into 5D, does not make sense. It has to change. Just like you used to have 7 chakras, now you have 9. It was an upgrade. Okay, so let me continue. One morning before dawn, Ani awoke me very quietly and motioned for me to put my clothes on. She put some tsampa cakes and fruit in the basket she carried on her back and gave me a large bouquet of what she called white soul flowers to carry in mine. We put our white pashmina shawls made from the softest neck hair in the Himalayas over our heads as we set out down the path at a brisk walk. The sky was overcast. As often happens, cloudy days remind me of my childhood in the Northwest, and I felt slightly removed from the surrounding village that slept under a blanket of fog. Even Ani seemed remote. I pulled on her sleeves, trying to keep up with her. "Ani, where are we going?" "We're catching the bus to Kathmandu," she said, without turning around or slowing her pace. After spending so much time in near isolation at Ani's house, the thought of going to a big noisy city was horrific. "Ani, do we have to?" I asked, dragging behind. "Yes," was all she answered. "But we'll be gone overnight. I didn't..." "Maybe," Ani interrupted me sharply, and I knew to close my mouth. Usually, any adventure was a good one, but not today. The wind was brisk and cool. I pulled my shawl around me again, and my encroaching depression and the relentless chill. Hours later, when we reached the bus stop, I was exhausted and thoroughly grumpy. We sat in the dust by the side of the road. Ani had decided not to speak to me, and I sat drawing pictures of horses in the gray dirt. Finally, the bus, an old sputtering contraption with purple fringe hanging over the windshield and yellow painting of the Garuda on the inside, came coughing and backfiring its way around the corner. Grinding to a slow halt, its doors opened, and out poured a tour group of Bermuda shorts, sunglasses, camera, raucous laughter, Korean and backslapping Southern accented Americans. "Hey, Blondie, would you ask that old lady where the nearest bathroom is?" a red-faced man asked me as he pulled his polo shirt down over his protruding belly. I pointed to the ditch by the side of the road as Ani and I got on the bus. Several Nepalese villagers joined us, replacing the tour group with bamboo cages of chickens and a small pig that squealed and snorted as it ran up and down the aisle. Annie and I sat side by side. I opened the window next to me. The warm air billowed over us, bringing the scent of rich, tilled soil and spring flowers. The sun had come out and lifted my spirits. I looked at Annie. I was going to apologize for my terrible mood, but her eyes were closed. Without opening her eyes, Annie said, "It's okay, little black wolf dancing." I had not heard that name since a ceremony long ago in Manitoba. I was taken back. How did she know that name? I stared at Annie, wondering why she had said that to me, but she had gone to sleep. Her body was swaying with the motion of the bus, and for some reason the way she had expressed little black wolf dancing put me on alert. Suddenly it dawned on me that something extraordinary was about to happen. When Agnes had told me about her baby daughter, little black wolf, dancing in one of our first ceremonies together, I had cried. Her little tiny girl had crawled out of the cabin and had been killed by sled dogs in the middle of the night. It had all happened so quickly before Agnes and her husband could get to the little girl. Agnes gave me a dress that had been intended for her daughter's initiation. In that ceremony, she took me as her daughter. It had marked a death for me as well, a death to life I had known. I thought for a while about Annie and wondered if that was why she had spoken that name, to remind me of that experience so long ago. I kept trying to argue with myself, to convince myself what we were probably going to do in Kathmandu, probably for supplies, but why? Then my whole body poised for some unknown threat. Annie was completely at ease. Her large coin earrings jingled on her ears, her turquoise blouse and sari blew gently in the wind from the open window, and her large creased hands lay folded and at peace on her lap. My body had become rigid with anxiety as I was about to awaken Annie to ask her what was happening. She surprised me by reaching out with her right hand, gently gripping the back of my neck. In an instant, my body and mind shook and took over like the muscles of my womb had taken over when I was giving birth. My lungs inflated and deflated in deep breaths that seemed to originate from my feet and circulated oxygen throughout my body. I must have lost consciousness because I do not remember anything until I heard a loud snapping sound. Annie and I were no longer on the bus. I woke up as if I was walking next to Annie. I had experienced total amnesia. We were in a temple-like enclosure. I could feel the energy of the city in the ground beneath my feet. A large stupa with the rounded womb-like form at the top, with the eyes of Buddha looking out over the courtyard, was to our left. I felt the cervix-like form of the stupa in my body like a sacred mountain pressing into me. The small square or monastery was made out of ancient bricks and smelled of smoke, cow dung, oil lamps, and rotting vegetables. Old men with red marks on their foreheads sat sleeping nearby, and several women in multicolored saris were lighting candles to a goddess place of worship inside a darkened room. Several pairs of shoes rested by the doorway, and little puppies scampered in and out that lapped at a puddle blackened with mud and oil from the lamps. Several greasy ducks joined them, and a few chickens pecked for seeds between the cracks in the bricks. Now and then a bell sounded as we walked through one damp passageway after another until we finally reached a chamber of separate rooms along a hallway made of dark stone slabs. Some of the doorways were inlaid with carved wood and painted blue and yellow in sacred designs. We pushed open a heavy carved wooden door with ornate dragons on the door handles. The light inside the room was tinged with dark gold and pink. I could hear chanting voices drowning from somewhere in the background. Occasionally a bell with sound, hushed voices could be heard whispering from the shadowed corners, and sometimes a light would flicker in the darkness as if someone had lit a match. Gold, red, blue, and green painted hangings of various dakinis decorated the dimly lit walls. At one end of the squarish enclosure was a gilded statue of the goddess Tara, her arms gracefully snaking into posture of bliss, her fingers curved in a delicate lotus-like configuration. I was vividly aware of the fact that I had lost several hours of time. I was walking through a red curtain with Ani, and together we sat in a semicircle on a cushion. Ani, where are we? Am I dreaming? Please answer me. I'm losing my mind. My fingers were digging into her arm. I felt like I was on the cutting edge of sanity. One moment I was vividly clear, and the next I felt cloudy and faint. You come to me with a true heart, said a female voice with a thick accent. I spun my face around from Anya and gasped. Sitting in front of me, or us, was a huge Nepali woman with a Buddha-like belly. I wondered how she could have entered the room so quickly and sat down with us without us seeing her. She was wearing a thin brocaded sari in golden shades of red, blue, and green. Her round face was smiling and her eyes sparkled like black diamonds. Dozens of embroidered flags hung in rows over our heads. The room glittered with golden icons and mandalas painted on silk. You entered here through the veil of the dream, because the way here must be kept its secret. It is law. One day, you will remember the dream, and the way will become known to you. I still don't know how a human being could be so enormous and yet be cat-like, but she was. There was a feline quality to her movement and her expression. Who are you? I managed to ask. The two women burst into friendly laughter as they watched me to try to cover my astonishment. I was at once repulsed and completely fascinated by this woman. They call me the serpent of the sky because they don't know me. The two women laughed again. This was a strange meeting, without any of the usual ritualistic behavior. The woman was scanning me very carefully. It was almost as if she wanted me to relax so she could view me more deeply. Thinking of this, I became more tense, and they kidded and laughed at me. What does serpent in the sky mean? I asked. Who knows, she replied as they giggled. Then getting abruptly serious, she said, it means oneness with all life, and it symbolizes balance of the male and female principles. Here, I will show you something. She picked up several stones and a small clear quartz crystal ball and handed them to me. I was so dumbfounded by the woman's almost American street-type humor and the obvious power that emanated from her being that I was stuttering words of thanks, and I fumbled with the stones, dropping them. I looked across at the woman, whose eyes had now turned to puffy slits with a tiny glint of light shining from within them. Everything is in a mist for you. I will clear away the clouds. This is my first gift to you. Annie reached into my basket for the white soul flowers, and she placed them in front of me. I picked them up and gave them to the woman. She was very pleased and laid them across her lap, which sparkled gold and red in the candlelight. She closed her eyes and became very still. She picked up a bronze bell in her left hand and with a wooden stick began to make a haunting tone by circling the lip of the bell. Then she made an odd, hollow sound with her voice as she held the bell up to her face. Hold the crystal ball to your third eye and hear me now. The woman was forceful with her words. I held the crystal to my third eye. I took a deep breath and tried to control the spinning feeling in my head as if the sound was twisting my brain. I closed my eyes. There are many aspects of the great mother goddess. I call the goddess Devi. We are each one and we are all of her aspects. I choose to call each aspect of her a face. Each of us, as initiates, live one phase perhaps for many lifetimes. You are not here to learn the truth as it relates to only Nepalese people. You are here to learn the truth that has been held by the power holders since the beginning of time, before the Dravidians of India, before the Harappans and the Nayars of Malabar, even before the Ponpu of Tibet and Nepal. There was a knowledge whose face wants to speak to you. Her face has been shown in aspect by certain tradition. She has been misunderstood by most in their limited religious view. But she is the universe. She is the womb of all life and the source of energy for all that lives in the cosmos. Her arms unfold the young and the old and bring comfort to the sick. She is pure mind, and yet she holds dominion over the material realm. She is the protector of those in harm's way. She arouses passion in the lover as her breasts embodied the sun and the moon in perfect balance. For each of the sacred luminous fibers, red, white, and black, she has corresponding eyes that match these sacred gunas, the threads of truth that create a connection between all material things, like a spider web connects one corner of a temple to another. She is the one who embodies the wisdom that confronts you at this very moment. Look forth and see your guiding star, for I am Devi, the great mother as Tara, and I will protect you. The voice of the woman was quiet. Her words echoed through the chamber, and then there was silence. Still holding the crystal to my forehead, I opened my eyes. The room was filled with a white light so powerful that my eyes brimmed with tears, but I could not close them. In place of the huge woman was a magnificent radiant being sitting on 1,000-petal lotus on a tranquil body of deep blue water. She was White Tara, the goddess of wisdom, the protector of Nepal. Her face shone with profound radiance. She was so awesome that my heart was filled with joy. I felt a letting go inside of myself. Wave after wave of emotion pulsed through me as if a river were rushing through my arteries, clearing out all psychic debris. Without speaking, she communicated to me that I should place the sacred stones that the woman had given me on my chakra centers and let them collect the negative energy that had gathered there from all my past lives. She said that this teaching was about karma and the cleansing of my soul. She said that Ani would show me what to do. Keep your crystal ball always. She will connect you with your Chiva, your third soul. That is the light that you are seeing now. It is the light of consciousness. Chiva is the light that shines from your eyes. You will learn to control it in time. Your work here has begun. Without warning, Tara vanished, and the blackness of night filled the room. I heard shouts of alarm in Nepali, and someone was shaking me by the shoulder. The crystal! Where is the crystal? I heard myself yelling. My arms were flailing around as if I fell from the seat on the bus onto the floor. I heard the pigs squealing and the bus brakes grind us to a halt. She will be fine. She had thrown me over her shoulder like a bag of rice. The next thing I knew, I was face down in the stream, running beside the road, and Ani used her foot to douse me good. Then she helped me to sit up. She used her shawl to dry off my hair and face. She waved to the bus so they could leave, and then took my hands in hers and held them to her forehead. She whispered several words I did not understand, and then peered hawk-like into my eyes. I gasped and sputtered for several moments, and then wiped the tears running down my cheeks. Here are the stones in your crystal. I will teach you how to use them, my daughter. She handed me a red brocade pouch. What happened? Where are we? I see the Chiva. Your third soul is stalking you. It will not be long. Say nothing, for Tara needs to rest within you. I know your confusion. All is well, and I'm proud, Ani said, kissing my third eye, with big tears running down her face as she smudged my forehead with red pigment. Come, we're not far from home. She held me to stand. I noticed that we were in another part of the valley, at a road crossing, not far from Ani's village. The sun was setting, the great snowy peaks purple and pink. Every tree, branch, and stone glowed with chrism, as if the earth was on fire. Now let me comment. I'm going to comment something. I think it's perfect. This was about the awakening of the third eye, to take the last, cloudiness, the last fog that will imbue that, like this it's like a filament that's over the third eye. So you see, but you don't really see with the clarity of the way you see your hand right now. Now, did you notice that Annie didn't give her the power to open her third eye? Annie led her through a portal to Tara. And Tara, a goddess, did the exercise and gave her telepathic instructions. And Tara assisted her still. She didn't open her third eye. She said, put the crystal on your third eye. And then there was incantations, right? And then her third eye is being activated in a very potent, powerful way. But you don't go to people and have them just fuck with your third eye. No one can open your third eye. You will be directed divinely by forces to do it. But no human being, a human being can guide you to these powerful, potent, but they will not, and they should never claim they can clear or clean or open your third eye. I'm a Reiki master. We clear energy, but we can't activate your third eye. We can bring about telepathically a communication with other beings, light beings that can heal that. But we in the mortal 3D realm, yeah, we can't do that. So when people say, "Oh yeah, I can go ahead and clean your shit," you have to have a very deep connection. Twin flames can do it. Some of us can do it with our parents, but it's something that is so rare. And did you see the power of these women? And there are people that are charlatans who you should know have no power. They don't have this kind of power. They don't have that kind of wisdom, years on the planet to create that kind of wisdom and humility. Do you understand? Humility to then guide you to a light being, whether you believe in Tara, we'll call it Tara for now, but whatever it is, to guide you to the great purging and awakening and, activation. Do you understand? And it's funny because it was my goal to reach chapter 9. It wasn't my goal at all. I'm letting the universe do what it needs to do. Do you understand? Thank you, Aurora. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Any question? Would you like me to continue? So this book, again, is called, it's a beautiful book you can find on eBay. Trust me, I'm not making any money pitching any of these books. I mean, there's no little orange card anywhere. I doubt this book is on TikTok, to be honest. Let me see. Hang on for a quick second. It was published in 1989. This is a true story. Some of the names and places in the books have been changed to protect the privacy of those included. So this is the real deal. She wrote, 15, 20 books. What is the name of the book? It's called, like I was saying, it's called Windhorse Woman. And it's on my comment page. When I actually wrote the actual title. Hopefully, let me know if you see it. Okay? So it's called Windhorse Woman by Lynn Andrews. All right. So this book I thought was interesting. Let me see. And it's very. She was called. I'm going to call her that. She was called the Carlos Castaneda of for the feminine. She was the Carlos Castaneda for the feminine. And the rest is more dialogue, gathering of the clan. There's all kinds of stuff, and it's amazing. I started learning about Native American in this level of consciousness when I watched the movie. I think it was called The Trial of Billy Jack. And in that he's an advocate, this, that, and the other. I'm going to read something to you. We're going to jump into Thich Nhat Hanh's anger, because right now the world, and depending on what you're going through personally, you might be going through something that's making you feel incredibly angry. So I just came to Gaining Victory. It's under transformation. It's about anger. The whole book is called Anger. It's probably the most important. One of the many, many more important books you need to buy is called Anger by Thich Nhat Hanh. Okay, so we're on the transformation chapter. I don't know which one. It's page 86. It's Gaining Victory. While cooking your potatoes, you have to cover the pot in order to prevent heat from escaping. That is concentration. So while you practice walking or breathing to take care of your anger, don't do anything else. Don't listen to the radio. Don't watch television. Don't read a book. Cover the pot and just do one thing. Just practice deep walking meditation, deep mindful breathing, and use 100% of yourself in order to embrace your anger exactly like you would take good care of a baby. After some times of embracing and looking deeply inside, insight will come and your anger will diminish. You'll feel, this is similar to depression. I can't tell you how many times I've power walked like 2.5 miles, and I went through the middle mark. Swear to God, it was always like damn near 1.5 miles every time. And suddenly I went from crying to fucking explosive laughter. Like my whole body had shed with a moist sweat. The power walking, I mean, like, fuck, moving and being mindful and not feel and concentrating on the anger or the depression. After some time of embracing and looking deeply, insight will come and your anger will diminish. You'll feel much better and you'll be motivated to go back and help other person. When you remove the lid of the pot, the potatoes will smell wonderful. Your anger will have been transformed into the energy of loving kindness. This is possible. It's like tulips. When the energy of the sun is strong enough, the tulip has to open herself and show her heart to the sun. Your anger is a kind of a flower. You have to embrace it with the sunshine of mindfulness. Let the energy of mindfulness penetrate into the energy of anger. After 5 or 10 minutes of mindfulness, your anger will be transformed. Every mental formation, anger, jealousy, despair, etc., is sensitive to mindfulness, the way all vegetation is sensitive to the sunshine. By cultivating the energy of mindfulness, you can heal your body and your consciousness, because mindfulness is the energy of the Buddha. In Christianity, it is said that Yeshua has the energy of God, of the Holy Spirit within him. That is why he is able to heal many people. His healing energy is called the Holy Spirit. In Buddhist language, that energy is the energy of the Buddha, the energy of mindfulness. Mindfulness contains the energy of concentration, understanding, and compassion. Thus, the practice of Buddhist meditation is the practice of generating the energy that will offer us concentration, compassion, understanding, love, and happiness. And let me just say that Yeshua, Jesus, went to India. And what he brought back in the last years was Buddhism. Buddha was born 600, I think it was about 650 years before Jesus. Yeshua. So let's not forget that. He brought back Eastern belief systems and teachings and trainings as a yoga, as a transmutator. And between him and Mary Magdalene, taught in the Temple of Isis, healing, ancient touch healing powers that some people are still bringing forth. Pretty fucking amazing, right? All right. Something's telling me to read something else, to be honest. Hang on. And I'm going to skip around because it's just... and it's going to be about the cathars. The cathars. Yeah, I'm going to read this to you. Here's why. Here's what I need you to understand. Something happened to bastardize the Christian religion in ways I don't think people really understand. Okay? So the cathars were persecuted because of their belief system that you could say is very Buddhist. So I'm going to give you a basic understanding. So the book I'm reading from is called The Cathars, the Most Successful Heresy of the Middle Ages by Sean Martin. And I'm reading the prologue, Bazir. It was the feast day of Saint Mary Magdalene, 22 July 1209. An all-out massacre had not been planned. A French army from the north, under the leadership of the papal legate Arnold Amouret, was camped outside of the town of Bazir in the Languedoc, recently arrived from a month-long march down the valley of the River Rhone. And the army's mission was to demand that the town elders hand over the 222 cathars, about 10% of the town's population. They were known to be harboring. The elders refused. That they did so says as much for the power of the Cathars' faith as it does for the complicated political situation in the south in which the Cathars had been able to flourish. There were a lot of massacres against people who truly understand or understood the word of Yeshua. Do you understand? Yeshua went to Tibet. He went to India. He went to He went to Egypt. Anne Rice wrote a book about the lost years, the boyhood years of Yeshua in Egypt. There's a book, Anne Rice, who wrote the Chronicles of, what were they? Lestat the Devil, the Chronicles of the Vampire, whatever, the Diary of a Vampire, whatever. I forgot the book anyway. But my point is, and she was a true Catholic, and she knew this shit. Okay? It's like ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is stupid in the 21st century. It's like you either want to know the truth of Yeshua. This is right now, there are people screaming rapture, 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 while people are being, and let me just say, that's a fake. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, let's continue about the Cathars. The Cathars had become so prominent in the Languedoc some 50 years previously, and were by the beginning of the 13th century virtually the dominant religion in the Languedoc. Unlike the majority of the Catholic clergy of the time, the cathars were conspicuously virtuous, living lives of apostolic poverty and simplicity. This in itself would have been enough to get the sect branded as heretics, as happened to the Lyon-based group, the Waldensians. But what was set the cathars apart from the Waldensians was their belief in not one God, but two, according to Cathar theology. There were two eternal principles, good and evil, with the world being under the sway of the latter. Did you hear that? Let me repeat. They believed in two gods. If you read the Old Testament, you can see that that's not the God that your soul remembers. It's an evil, spiteful bitch demanding all kinds of crazy shit. I'm just going to say it like that. So the cathars believed not in one God, but two. According to Cathar theology, there were two eternal principles, good and evil, with the world being under the sway of the latter, aka the evil. They were implacably hostile to the Church of Rome, which they denounced vehemently as the Church of Satan. Now, why do you think that is? Just think about it. The Cathars were not only ones to oppose Rome, most of the south, or what we would today call France, was fiercely independent and regarded both the Northern Army and the papal agents as foreign invaders. It was therefore unthinkable that the Cathars, fellow Southerners, could be handed over to the opposition. Now why? Well, because they understood the truth about the holy marriage between Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And I don't care if some comments were filtered. Good. I'm glad I've actually triggered you. Good. Good. Wake up. Wake the fuck up. Wake up. Okay? Wake up. The enemy, I bet you've never heard of Cathars. How many of you, seriously, say I heard of him, or say yes, I heard of him. How many of you have heard of the Cathars? How many? Okay. I haven't. Me. Good. Good for you. I haven't. And there's no shame in that. The enemy was not heresy, but anyone who challenged the authority and autonomy of the local nobility, the powerful counts and vicomtes of Toulouse, Foix, and Carcassonne. The combination of heresy and politics was combustible. One, however, Pope Innocent III, 1198 to 1216, saw sufficient grounds to call for a crusade. The West had been launching crusades with varying degrees of success ever since 1095, but they had all been directed against the Muslims. Under Innocent's pontification that began to change, the Fourth Crusade, launched in 1202, did not bode well for the heretics and nobles of the Languedoc. Although aimed at the Holy Land, the Crusaders veered widely off target in the spring of 1204 and sacked the fellow Christian city of Constantinople. The campaign called against the Cathars was different. It would be the first crusade to be conducted within the West against people who were fellow countrymen and women. It was a civil war. Arnold Amaury called for a meeting with his generals. It was clear that the heretics were not going to be given up without a fight. While the meeting was going on, a fracas broke out between a small band of crusaders and a group on the walls of the town. Insults were exchanged. In a rash move, the defenders opened the gates, and a small group of men from Béziers ventured out to teach the crusaders some manners. They swiftly dealt with the Northerners, but the news quickly spread that the gate was open. Crusaders poured into the town. Word got back to Arnold Amaury. What should they do? How would they recognize Cathars from Catholics? The papal legate, paraphrasing 2 Timothy, uttered the notorious command, kill them all, God will recognize his own. You fucking believe this shit. In the ensuing bloodbath of abattoir Christianity, you know what abattoir means, right? I hope. Between 15,000 and 20,000 innocent people were butchered. A more conservative estimate puts the number of victims as a mere 9,000. Even women and children taken refuge in the Cathedral of Saint-Nazaire were not spared. The cathedral was torched, and anyone caught fleeing was put to the sword. By the evening, rivers of blood coursed through the streets of Béziers. Churches and houses smoldered. Once they had finished killing, the Crusaders looted what was left. The Albigen's crusade, as it came to be known, had begun. Unlike the Fourth Crusade, however, it had gone out of control at the very beginning. The atrocities of Béziers would have confirmed to cathars everywhere their belief that they alone were God's elect and that the world was indeed evil. The cathars. So these are the books that is going to empower you to understand the shift into moving into 5D. Okay? And meanwhile, people are running around. I swear to God, I just read some comments. People selling their homes to spend all their money getting ready for the rapture, something man-made in 1830. Did you know that? Because I didn't know that until this year. I had no idea that the rapture was actually man-made. So to really understand Yeshua, if you really love Yeshua, seriously, if you really, really have a connection with God, which many of you do, and you really want to know God and his messengers, or God's he, she messengers, however politically correct, the entity that created us all, let's put it that way, and the energy that brought about messengers, you have to know the truth. The entire fucking truth. That means you need to know about the Cathars, you need to know about the Knights Templars and why Friday the 13th became infamous. You need to know about what really happened with Joan of Arc. You need to understand the method of oppression and suppression with Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, who was the first editor of the Bible. Period. End stop. That's it. You either want to be, as I put it, a real Christian, or you're just going to be a brainwashed, person that says, oh, it's just, this is the only book I'm going to read. Well, that book has been bastardized. And here's the truth. And I'm not going to apologize. Because here it is. Heresy and orthodoxy. Catharism was the most popular heresy of the Middle Ages. Indeed, such was its success that the Catholic Church and its apologists referred to it as the Great Heresy. As the 12th century turned into the 13th, it was at its zenith. Cathars could be found from Aragon to Flanders, from Naples to the Languedoc. Its equivalent of priests, the perfect lived lives, so conspicuously virtuous. Did you hear that? They were so virtuous. They were so virtuous, they were called heretical, that even their enemies had to proclaim that they were indeed holy and good people. Did you? The Cathars found widespread support from all areas of society, from kings and counts to carpenters and weavers. Women, never welcomed by the church, became Cathars, knowing they could earn respect and actively participate in the faith. Do you know why? Because they knew of Mary Magdalene. They knew that she was an equal. They knew that Mother Mary was an equal. How is this heretical? How could they butcher very good people who were so virtuous that you're so virtuous, you're a heretic? And they knew there were two gods. Do you understand? Many of us are incarnations of Cathars. And I'll tell you why I know. Because many of us have been chasing Yeshua for fucking decades going, this is not it. This is not fucking it. And I'll say it again. They believe, can you imagine? They believe he went to Utah, but God forbid Yeshua ever went to Egypt, India, and Tibet. Oh, let's not believe that. But oh yeah, they were in Utah. He was in Utah. The level of stupid is unmatched. And it's based on racism. Ultimately, it's based on racism. I mean, let's be honest. Right? I mean, I'm not here to beat anyone's brow. I'm here to fucking open your third eye. You have the power to open your third eye and download. I was telling a friend yesterday, we have to rewrite the holy books. I'm sorry. They were written by men before. We should down, because they're saying, oh, well, these guys were like, divinely. Okay, great. Well, we're going to be divinely. And we really will be. Divinely. directed to write, just like Joan of Arc. No one can call her a fraud. No one. No one. No one ever said, you're a lying little girl that has daddy issues, okay? She had fucking battalions, troops, guys that had gone through the crusade following this little slip of a girl to free their country from the British rule. Again, remember, women never welcomed by the church became cathars, knowing they would earn respect and actively participate in the faith. Needless to say, this mixture of women, virtue, and apostolistic poverty, to say nothing of the cathars' church popularity, did not sit well with Rome. Well, why? Well, because they could no longer control the populace. Because they could no longer get alms and a pig to pay for their taxes to the Catholic Church. But nor did Rome sit well with the cathars, who believed that the church had, in its pursuit of worldly power, betrayed Christ's message. Well, no shit. That Catholicism would move against the cathars was hardly surprising. Indeed, in some areas in the south of France, cathars were more numerous than Catholics. What shocked contemporaries was not the Pope ordered a crusade to put the heresy down, but that the Crusaders committed atrocities of such magnitude that they are still echoing down the third centuries. In the Languedoc, these crimes have never really been forgotten. Sit with this for a minute. Just sit with this. Sit with this. They took the purity of Yeshua. I sometimes wonder who the fuck was the bishop during the Council of Nicaea that allowed, because think about it, this is massive, that allowed that when he came out of the crypt 3 days into, his resurrection, that the first woman, the first set of eyes that sees him is not Mother Mary, it's not one of the apostles, it's not a man, it's Mary of Magdalene. How the fuck did they push that through? Like, really, seriously, how? And the turning of the tables. How did that... Well, I guess they had to give a reason, right? For the crucifixion. It had to be something. But think of that. And how the Essenes took some of these wonderful Gnostic teachings and stuffed them in jars, hiding them in the caves, in the mountains of Sinai, for example. There's still jars out there with holy writings from witnesses. Do you understand? They thought the cathars treated women equally. The Catholic Church, I'm trying to remember when I wrote this in my book, Recall. The Catholic Church had a meeting. They had many meetings, but one of the meetings they had, the first one, was to kick around whether or not women had souls. So they decided we had B-grade souls. Well, to be honest with you, they believed that all sentient beings had souls, all animals. So we were regulated to B-grade souls. The cathars believed women were equal. Why? Because of Mary Magdalene. She was one of the reasons. And they knew the truth. There's a lot more to this, right? See, when we're chasing Mary Magdalene is knowing who was dangerous to the system of oppression. And the most important thing was to oppress the autonomy of the matrix, the womb, aka the womb, which I learned from this, oh God, I forgot her name, the woman who originally wrote these stories on the Matrix and the Terminator, black woman. All right. So, if you're going to read the Bible, and if you're going to read the Bible, read the one that is a direct translation of the Aramaic and Latin and Greek. That's it. That's the only one. So that means you need to go find yourself a Bible that goes back maybe from the 1700s. Now you're talking. And then start pulling out shit like this, the Cathars. Then you start pulling books on the Knights Templars. Okay? Let me continue a little bit. Strangely, for all its popularity, the exact origin of Catharism are unknown. It emerged at a time when the church and Europe as a whole were undergoing enormous change prior to emerging into the so-called Renaissance of the 12th century. Although it is difficult to imagine the scale of atrocities, such as Béziers, we can go some way to understand the mindset of the cathars, persecutors, by studying the history of the church and how heresy emerged from it. Moreover, a study of the history of the dualistic heresy, essentially the belief that the devil is as powerful as God, to which Catharism belong, will help to set things in perspective. Like Catharism, dualism has murky beginnings. Dualism existed before Christianity. It may even be older than recorded history itself. The term was first coined in 1700 by the English Orientalist Thomas Hyde to describe any religion system which held that God and the devil were two opposite co-eternal principles. The term evolved to include any system that revolved around a central binary pairing, such as the mind-body split in the philosophy of Descartes, or the immortal soul and mortal body in that of Plato. Dualistic strands exist in one form or another in all major religions, whether monotheistic, acknowledging one God, such as Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, polytheistic, acknowledging many gods, such as Shintoism, some form of Wicca, or the pantheon of classical Greece, I'm going to add, and Egypt, or monistic, acknowledging that everything, the divine, matter, and humanity is of one and the same essential substance, such as certain schools of Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and pantheism. For example, fundamentalist Christianity has pronounced dualistic slant and that it sees many things in the world: rock, music, drugs, New Age, philosophies, Hollywood, blockbusters, as being the world of the devil. Likewise, extremist Islamic groups see non-Muslims as either essentially asleep to the truth or actively engaged in undermining the religion of the Prophet. In both cases, an us and them mentally prevails. I'll add Judaism to that list at all, to be fair, because he didn't write that, and I think that's bullshit. All three Abrahamic religions, it's us and them. But to be fair, one of the great wars during the Crusade, called Saladin, had incredible, and again, watch the movie, and I told you to watch it. Watch the movie Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut. Make sure you watch the director's cut, that's the important one. Saladin was a great man. And he was a merciful warrior, a Muslim warrior, king, a leader. And many of the crusaders were fucking barbarians. Absolute pieces of shit, and racist as fuck. But the Knights Templars, which they kind of confused, because I have a feeling that Ridley Scott didn't really understand. I don't think he really studied it. And again, the next thing I might do with you guys is read to you from the Knights Templars by Freddie Silver, and we'll skip around. I'm trying to turn you on to really fucking awesome books that will open your whole world, and you'll start analyzing and connecting the dots of lost truths. Because I can tell you're intelligent, you're listening to me, and you're listening to some pretty scholarly shit. This is scholarly. And you're curious because you want the truth. You want, how do we get here? How do we get to crazy fucking fundamental, especially in this country, of some of the things that we're seeing happening in Christianity? How the fuck did we get here, right? All right, let's continue. Despite these varying levels of dualism in the different faiths of the world, religious dualism stands apart in positing the notion of the two opposite principles of good and evil. Within the dualistic tradition itself, there are generally held to be two schools of thought: absolute or radical dualism and mitigated or monarchian dualism. The Italian historian of religious Ugo Bianca identified these three distinct features of dualism. So let's read. No, I can't. I'm sorry. This is not, no. If you want, you can book a session. Absolute dualism regards the two principles of good and evil as co-eternal and equal, whereas mitigating dualism regards the evil principles as a secondary, lesser power to the good principle. Absolute dualism sees the two principles as locked in combat for all eternity, and in many schools regard time as cyclical. Many absolute dualistic therefore tend to believe in reincarnation, whilst mitigating dualism sees historical time as being finite. At the end of time, the evil principle will be defeated by the good. Absolute dualism sees the material world as intricately evil, but mitigated by dualism regards creation as essentially good. It's almost like we're fucking 4-year-old kids that believe that our parents will always stay married and we're shocked they're divorcing. Dualism. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we have been sold in the last, I'd say, 3,000 years that the polarity of these incarnation includes malignant evil. I've learned a lot about religion and also with Ashayana Dana. Got it. The good religion. Zoroastrianism is usually held in the first major world religion to espouse a dualistic view of the world. However, the dualism presents in ancient Egypt religious predates Zoroastrianism by some century, if not by millennia. The exact date of the founding of Zoroastrianism, I can't pronounce it, being unknown. Polarities such as that of light and dark are frequently found in ancient Egyptian religion through perhaps the best known of them being the opposition of Horus, sometimes Osiris and Seth. In the various versions of the myths that have survived, the two gods are portrayed as being constantly at war with one another, with Seth never being able to destroy Horus despite blinding him in one eye. Oh shit. You know what that means? Blinding him in one eye? That's removing the third eye. So to be honest, with the two gods who are in internal battle is basically us. We're constantly battling the false ego, the monkey mind. And so the soul is our innate truth, our soul. We are housed in these temporary vessels, which are pulsing with ego, which there's purpose to ego. Obviously, we all know why, I hope. But the battle of the two gods is who's going to be top dog. And to be honest, the soul isn't going to fight that. The soul really stays quiet. But the battle to allow your soul to speak, the minute you make a decision that you want to hear your soul, your monkey mind starts attacking you, and therein lies the battle. And of course, blinding him in the one eye, that's the third eye. Yeah, I'm gonna skip this for a minute. Hang on, okay? I'm looking for something else. The Council of Nicaea, perfect. Let's read it. The course of Western civilization changed forever on 28 October 312 when the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, 306 to 37, achieved a decisive victory over his brother-in-law Maxentius at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, just outside Rome. The two men had been engaged in a power struggle since Constantine's ascension, and at Milvian Bridge, matters came to a head. The night before the battle, however, things did not look good for Constantine. His men were outnumbered 4-1, and defeat seemed likely. As evening drew on, Constantine saw the Greek letters XP, the first two letters of the word Christ, suddenly appeared on the setting sun together with a cross and the motto Hoc signo vinces. In this sign you will conquer. I think this is religious propaganda. I'm not joking. He was not Christian. They baptized him after his death. So I think right now I'm going to say that I'm reading some propaganda shit. Just be aware, or just take it if you like it. Constantine saw it as an omen and ordered the cross to be painted on his soldiers' shields. When he won an outright victory the next day, Constantine put the success down to the God of the Christians, converted to the faith, and issued the Edicts of Milan, which ordered an end to religious persecution across the empire. As soon as Christianity began to flourish with a newfound state, there were problems. Arianism, in particular, was proving to be controversial with its view that God, the Father, and Christ, the Son, were two distinct entities, with Christ being seen as inferior to God. To settle the matter, Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea, whose opening session began on May 20th, 325. In the 2 months that the council sat, the 300 or so church fathers gathered at Nicaea debating a number of topics, including the fixing of the date of Easter, but by far the most important issue was Arianism, In an attempt to establish an orthodox position on Christ's divine nature, the Nicene Creed was propagated on June 19th, which drew the battle line between Orthodox and everyone else. Belief in the tenets of the creeds were central to Orthodoxy. They included a belief in God the Father, maker of heaven and earth, in Christ, the only Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father, true God from true God, begotten, not made, one in being with the Father, who was born of the Virgin Mary and became man for our sake. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered, died, and was buried. On the third day, he rose again. In fulfillment of the scriptures, Christ's flock was to be ministered unto solely by one holy Catholic apostolic church. I need to read to you guys the Gnostic Gospel by Elaine Pagel. I think that'll be next. I have to find the copy. She's a theologian, professor, was at, I believe, Princeton or Yale University. The key issues of Christ's divinity and his being one in being with the Father was settled by vote. The Arians lost and were declared heretics. How fun. The church was sending out a clear message. They were the only means by which one could achieve salvation. Interesting. Do you understand the cruelty of this orthodoxy was unhinged? I'm not saying we have some really great bishops and monsignors and nuns, and we really do, okay? But fuck. Look at the foundation of this shit. Interestingly enough, one of the lesser matters that the Council of Nicaea dealt with, alongside with what to do with zealots who had castrated themselves, with whether to welcome a strongly ascetic group back to the church who had proclaimed strongly against Christianity, whose faith had lapsed sometimes under torture. The group was known as the cathars, or pure ones, from the Greek katharo. Although this sect was not dualistic and almost certainly had nothing to do with the medieval cathars, it is tempting to see their fate as ominous precursors of what was to come. The Nicaea cathars were denounced and declared heretics, and the cult died out along in the 5th century. This is, I don't know what to say. So to decide to have, let me put it this way. To decide to have a relationship with God in the woods, right? To commune with the elements and feel the wind speak to you as divine guidance was considered heretical. You had to go to church. You could only allow the priest to speak to God for you. You see why we've had mental illness for 2,000 years? Because sometimes what they said to us was wrong. What we saw them do with women and children was wrong. And yet we were too afraid to question it. Or when we did, we were shown what they did to people who questioned. So the cathars seem to be a very noble, loving, sweet people who saw women, and this is very important. And this is like the destruction of the divine masculine and feminine. So I'm going to read to you a little bit. This is from, again, the book. It's called The Cathars by Sean Martin, the most successful heresy in the Middle Ages. Okay, so the Languedoc of the turn of the 13th century. The Languedoc in the year 1200 was a society in a remarkable flower. It was one of the most cosmopolitan and sophisticated area of Europe. Trade flourished in the great towns of Toulouse and Carcassonne, with Toulouse itself being only outclassed by Rome and Venice in terms of size and cultural life. The arts were enjoying a renaissance, with the ideas of courtly love being practiced in the songs, poems of the troubadours. Religious tolerance was conspicuous, and Jews in particular enjoyed freedom that they were denied elsewhere. Woven into this rich fabric was Catharism, which by the turn of the 13th century was endemic throughout the Languedoc, encouraged by the momentous visit of Nicitas the Perfect, had been hard at work with over a generation spreading the dualistic word through the south, creating an heretical kingdom that stretched from Provence to Aragon. They have been so successful is a tribute both to the temerity and faith of the perfect, but also to the unique way life that the Languedoc was enjoying at this high watermark in its history. The name Languedoc is a contradiction. Langue d'or, the language of yes, a reference to the fact that in a region native tongue, Occitan, yes, is orc, not oui. The French language and those who spoke it were far to the north in the Ile-de-France. Power in the Languedoc was shared between the Counts of Toulouse, Foix and Comminges, and the Vicomte of Béziers and Carcassonne. Although the Languedocian cathars did not argue amongst themselves, the lords of Languedoc resembled the Italian cathars. Disputes were frequent, quarrels habitual, petty vendettas the norm. The most powerful of them all was Raymond VI, Count of Toulouse. His court was a kaleidoscope mix of Catholic, Cathar, and Jew, entertained by troubadours and jugglers. His friends, as Sten O'Shea notes, were not distinguished for their piety. Raymond had inherited his title in 1194 from his father Raymond V. His parents seem to have been on opposite sides of the fence in matter of faith. Raymond's mother, Constance, had been present at Lombert in 1165 when the Cathars had faced down their Catholic opponents, while his father had invited a group of churchmen to investigate the heresy situation in his lands in 1177. They came, they saw, and promptly concluded that eradicating Catharism from the Languedoc was an impossible task and went home as soon as possible. The one man who they did manage to convict was sent to Jerusalem as penance. When he got back to Toulouse, far from having the tail between his legs, he was given a hero's welcome and was promptly given a well-paid job. This pretty much summed things up. As Saint Bernard had found his coat, Languedoc was indeed a land of many heresies, and respect for the church was about as low as it could possibly be. Like fucking yes. Oh, Lord. If you've ever seen the Borgias, the show The Borgias, he was the first Spanish non-Italian pope. If you watch The Borgias with Jeremy Iron, you can see why. In fact, I've said it before, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince based on the Borgias. And if you've ever studied Machiavellian, narcissistic, like the way to manipulate the courts and people in a demonic way, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So we've gone through 3 books. Windhorse Woman, which is about Nepal and the magic of our third eye opening. Anger, because when you feel impotent, you're going to get pissed off as hell, by Thich Nhat Hanh, and that gives you a sense of, like how to cultivate and promote compassion and affection to your anger, so that you're not going to also, beat yourself up. And then we read The Cathars by Sean Martin, which is really about what we've been lied to about so many things. And to me, the Cathar religion, or the belief system and the philosophy that saw women as equal, is all I really have to hear, to want to go further in studying their belief system and why it was so popular. And again, it's because they knew the truth between the divine sacred union of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. I'll upload this on YouTube. Please follow me on YouTube. And any questions before I go? Any questions? Yeshua said the temple is in you. This is why I believe, and I'm convinced that everything is in us. Absolutely. But we also learn from each other. Let's not forget. Why do you think I read books? Because I've learned. Okay? All right. Sending you much love on your journey. Namaste. Be well. Oh, what is the question, Ghost? What is your question, if you could type? You said you had a question? Can you say yes, or else I'll just cut off? I can't see. Okay. I'm going to... Thank you. Follow me on YouTube. Yes. Okay, go ahead. Type your question. As long as it's regarding what we were discussing, that would be cool. And thank you, Aurora, for following me on YouTube. Yeah, no, we're going to start reading books. I'm going to shift a lot because I need us to get to an understanding of what we need to do spiritual. Do you have any videos on spiritual warfare? I have one video on how it's painful to ascend, and it's there under my Ascension playlist on YouTube. So I have that. But in terms of actual spiritual warfare, like demonic attacks, I think I better do some. I'll go ahead and just remind me, okay, to do one, because it's not just one, it would be multiple. And I would have to, I might even actually do a live on spiritual warfare. I've done them here and there. You know how I mix my lives, but now I'm going to try to read books that I'm divinely guided to read on a day, because I didn't choose these books. I just chose them literally before I hit live. Okay, I went into my library and just picked them up, and I trust how that came out. And it gave you a multiple kind of ways to see your evolution. We have to start the Sophia Project and talk about Mary Magdalene and Yeshua more. Yeah, well, I have a whole video. Aurora, if you look under my Mary Magdalene and Yeshua playlist, it's a whole, tons and tons of videos, tons of lives. You can't afford my prices. I'm sorry. I understand. I would like to know more on spiritual warfare too. Thank you for speaking out, because I would like that. Okay, cool. So I'll think about a next live, because I have to think about it, because I know that many of you are going through that. And one of the things I can tell you very quickly is if you feel like you're being attacked, then you better look at my playlist under guided meditations, under doing the 4 corners above and below. You should learn how to do that. And before you go into your meditation, you may want to do that so that you don't get any corrupted bullshit or attacks. And if you sage every day, you're going to protect yourself from spiritual attacks. I've been spiritually attacked back in, how old was I? It was back in 2006. I was being spiritually attacked, and then I finally saw it. So it's not something crazy. And I have a friend who had a demon. I'm not joking, some kind of, and definitely a demon. And it was a picture, and I've told her, please fucking publish that. Like, fucking do a video on that, because people need to know that this is real. And on the side of the window, you see this weird ghoulish face. You can't make this shit up. And it's not steam. It's just in that portion of the window. And it looks like what it is. And so these things are real, and they've been created over centuries with these weird religious belief systems, and they've basically created their existence. All right. Sending you much love on your journey. Namaste. Follow